Part 1. Are we sane? The 1930s was a weird time to be alive. Just 12 years away from the end of the first major world war, and 10 years away from another major world war. Obviously, you had the Depression of the 1920s. You needed some form of distraction from the harsh bearings of the world. In the 1930s, that was radio.
Part 2.
One of the most calming things to come out of the 1930s was President Franklin Delano Roosevelt addressing American issues. Here's a clip from one of his famous fireside chats.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My friends, I want to talk for a few minutes with the people of the United States about banking. To talk with the comparatively few who understand the mechanics of banking, but more particularly with the overwhelming majority of you who use banks for the making of
That was
deposits
Franklin
and the
Delano
drawing of-
Roosevelt's first fireside chat in 1933. He went on to talk about the banking crisis. But the real story here is the medium itself.
Part 3.
The crapshoot.
To me, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt Fireside chats a radio channel to go directly into the houses in 1934 struggling with the Great Depression. Radio had become the nation's lifeline, but it did come with some shortcomings. What came about was unco-opted split regulators. See, in 1912, courts gutted federal control under the old law saying, quote, "This section does not give the head of that department discretionary power over the issue of licenses." This was just begging for trouble. In 1926, a federal court held the Secretary of Commerce, claiming they had no authority to assign or limit frequencies, power, or hours. He basically had to issue licenses and couldn't manage scarcity. This resulted in stations jumping frequencies / time slots with little recourse. Basically TLDR. Hoover dropped the keys, Zenith joyrode the dial, and Congress called the FRC to tow it and set the speed limit. And just like your average piece of legislation, it didn't work that well. From the Titanic to the border blaster medicine incident. Post-1927. The USS Akron airship disaster, 1933. While on a mission to calibrate radio direction finder stations off New Jersey, Akron flew into a severe storm. Radio contact grew unreliable, lightning drowned the whine of radio's dots and dashes. And the ship crashed at sea, killing 73, including Admiral William Moffett. At the time, aeronautical radio was overseen by the Commerce Department's Aeronautics Branch, while broadcast spectrum issues sat with the FRC, illustrating how safety-critical radio lived under different rulebooks. FDR himself would find frustration in this and would call for Congress to a bill to form the FCC. Enter the 1996 Telecommunications Act. The first major overhaul since 1934, but was it really? The current talk of the time is how music, news, etc. is dead, but rarely ever talk about this act when it comes to that discourse. There was a time before, if drove cross-country, you'd get a different atmosphere, a different way of infrastructure and way of life, and you'd guess it a new form of music. It was a great way to explore something new. Go cross the country, past the time of 1996, you would notice how your favorite radio station changed the format of it. Fast forward circa 2006, and you'd pissed that every channel you turn to is just another Nickelback song now. I get the hate for Nickelback. Pivot
Station. It's the same five songs. The same five songs. The radio station, they play the same five songs. The same five songs. The same five songs. The radio station, they play the same.
back to the Telecommunications Act. Just like everything, it wasn't, although it created discounted internet and telecommunications access for K-12 schools and public libraries. Section 230 of the CDA protected online platforms from being sued over what their users posted in that mess of a bill. There was a few good things to come out of it. The problem comes with an overreach government, an overreach of monopolies. Fast forward past the aughts, and where we are now. The proposed Nexstar tenure merger of 2025 represents one of the largest consolidation attempts in US broadcasting, valued at roughly $6.2 billion. If approved, the deal would make Nexstar the single largest local broadcaster in the country, controlling or influencing stations that collectively reach far beyond the FCC's 39% national audience cap. To complete the merger, Nexstar would require either waivers or adjustments to existing FCC ownership rules, making the deal heavily dependent on regulatory discretion. Critics argue this move directly undermines long-standing protections against media monopolies, since it would concentrate enormous market power into the hands of a single corporate entity. The concerns extend beyond simple market share. Consolidation on this scale erodes the principle of localism, the idea that stations should serve the distinct needs of their communities. Instead of diverse local reporting, programming decisions become centralized under a corporate headquarters, reducing independent voices and homogenizing content across the country. The merger would also give Nexstar enormous leverage over networks such as ABC, NBC, and CBS, since it would control many of their most important affiliates. That leverage could allow Nexstar to pressure networks for favorable terms or influence programming itself, raising alarms about editorial independence. This situation remains of the failed Sinclair Tribune merger of 2017 to 2018, when Sinclair sought to expand its reach to over 70% of US households. That deal collapsed after the FCC scrutinized Sinclair's use of shell companies and its attempts to skirt ownership caps, demonstrating both the dangers of unchecked corporate consolidation and the power regulators hold to block it. The Nexstar tenure case highlights a dual risk: corporate overreach.
That is the end of this broadcast. Let me know what you think in the comment section below.